to her. They do have sexual intercourse. They continue that course of conduct. And she rents a U-Haul, and there's an agreement between the two of them involving Mr. Alexander's automobile, a BMW.
Give her a car.
Basically, he gives it to her, but not really giving, in the sense that she has to pay him. And she has to pay him an undetermined amount of money per month.
She never paid him $1.
Yes. He actually then buys a Prius, a black Prius. And so in early April of 2008, she loads up that U-Haul. Her mother may have come out here, but left before that. And then straps the BMW behind it. Doesn't get very far before there's a problem. The BMW starts leaking oil and all these kinds of things because she left it in first gear and cannot be towed. So now the BMW is destroyed and it goes to some sort of shop. But she leaves it, but she's still basically going to pay for that BMW because she's the individual that was in control of it. But that's still sort of up in the air about that. Well, you would have thought that once she moved to Wairika, which is approximately 1,000 miles away, you would have thought that their relationship would have been over.
No way.
They continue to talk. They continue to send text messages,
phone sex,
instant messaging, and oh yes, there's the phone sex that she records of them.
Nasty
they
shit.
Are engaged in that particular conduct, and it's the phone sex that she keeps. Well, 2 short months after that, April of 2008, when she moved to Wairika, in June 9th of 2008, the police get a 911 call. The Mesa Police Department receives a 911 call. And the person calling on the other...
Now, mind you, the reason she was upset is he got a free vacation from his company to go to Cancun, Mexico. And he's going to take this different Mormon girl because he knew there was no future with Jodi. Jodi's a sicko. She's sexually nuts. He needed somebody, as an anchor for his life. He was struggling with his religion anyway. He was struggling with Mormonism, sexism, whatever you want to call it, or having sexual intercourse. And he had to, the whole idea is she was so fucking enraged that he was taking the other girl. That's what led to her killing him. She murdered him like 7 days before he was supposed to go to Cancun, Mexico.
The other line is an individual by the name of Marie Hall. And Marie Hall is an individual that Mr. Alexander has taken an interest in. She is somebody that is very much in the faith. She's somebody that is in his singles ward, so that they go and they sit around and they socialize and they talk about Mormon doctrine. And so she's somebody that he feels much affinity to, and he starts to court her. And again, this is when the defendant is already in Wairika. He begins to look at her, and the relationship with Lisa Andrews is now over. And so he begins to take her out. There's a total of 3 dates that they go on. But for her, there's really no spark there. She's not interested in the slightest in him. Not only is she not interested in the slightest in him, she lets him know about it. It's not like she's going to sit there and just continue to go out with him and hang out and that sort of thing. No, they go out one time, they go back to a bookstore and they drink hot chocolate. There's no contact at all. There's not even sometimes what is considered the obligatory goodnight kiss. There's none of that. And she lets him know, I'm just not interested in you.
Yep.
And in fact, she starts to date somebody else. After she breaks up with that person, Mr. Alexander feels...
The worst thing is that girl, she never liked him. And they were going to go on vacation as friends. There was no sexual... and it was crazy, man.
That perhaps there's a chance with him. And so they go out one more time and they go to a crafts kind of thing where they put a pot together, that's the kind of thing. Or they go rock climbing. That's the extent of their dating relationship. He's interested, she is not, but there's never any physical contact. The things that Mr. Alexander has is a free trip to Cancun. This organization, this prepaid legal that he's involved in, has given him, along with other people with the PPL, a trip to Cancun. And he's allowed to take somebody with him. And so he approaches this Marie or Mimi Hall about going with him to Cancun. She says, no, I really don't want to go because I don't want you to believe that there's something going on between us. I really don't want to go there.
That's why he liked her more.
Tells her that that's
There's
not
no sex involved.
In fact, they're even going to be in different bedrooms. So it's a situation where she's been to Cancun before. She wants to go. It was fun. So
see, the other girl, she said, listen, I can't go because I'm not interested in you. I don't want you to think I'm interested in you. She's telling the truth. That's why he kept on liking her more. That's the one I want to marry this woman, whatever in his mind. And he said, okay, we could go and stay in separate bedrooms and all that stuff. And she agreed to go.
So she doesn't see any harm in going. And so the trip that they're supposed to go on is supposed to start on the 10th of June. And so she's the one that's on the phone on June 9th. And she hasn't spoken to Mr. Alexander
Excuse me.
since June 2nd, which is a Monday. And it's strange to her because the trip is impending, and he usually would call her every day or send text messages or maybe email her. So it was strange that he hadn't called her. They didn't think anything of it. You know, since they were only going to go as friends, what's the big deal, right? And so when she doesn't hear from him up until the 9th, before they're to go, which is the 9th, which is a Tuesday, well, Monday, one of the things she does is she goes over on that Monday night. And when she goes over there, she goes and knocks on the door. And she knocks on the door very, very hard. Well, nobody answers. The only thing that she sees is the dog. The dog Napoleon, which is Mr. Alexander's dog, comes up to the door, just sort of throwing himself up on the door very excitedly. And she can tell that there's something wrong here. But nobody answers the door, and she doesn't know how to get in. Now there's 4 of them. There's Mimi Hall, her girlfriend, and these 2 other individuals, 2 men. They open the door, and when they open the door, Marie Hall stays behind. And the 2 men go inside. But she's able to see through the crack all this blood that's in the hallway. And the 2 individuals come out running excitedly and saying, there's blood here. And that's Travis. He's in the shower. He's dead. And that's the reason that Marie Hall was on the telephone that evening of June 9th, 2008, calling the police to let them know that the person that she was going to go to Cancun with the next day, this friend of hers from the church, Travis Alexander, was dead. Well, of course, the police responded. And one of the things that they were able to note, and I do have a diagram so that maybe you can follow closer what I'm saying. I told you that, and this is exhibit number
Lucky left, man.
249. I told you that Marie Hall and her friends went to this door, and this is the door. As you can see there, looking there, that's a big red spot.
Look at that
And there
witch.
was lots of blood that you
Fucking
can
witch.
see here. And of course, the body is found on the lower right-hand corner in the shower. It wasn't standing, it wasn't anything, it was all just sort of hunched in. And one of the things that struck the investigators when they first went in there and they started looking at this is that the scene had been staged. It had been manipulated. Whoever had been the killer of this scene had manipulated that scene. And the police knew that that scene had been manipulated, first of all, by where the body was found. The body was found inside the shower, and the killing had obviously taken place somewhere else because there was blood all around the bottom here, the southern part. Right there on the sink, it is clear that the victim had stood over.
Because once she stabbed him in the shower, he ran. She stabbed him in the heart. He's going to be dead anyway. So, as a reaction, as human, you try to, fear of flight. He tried to survive this shit, and he ran out, and she kept on stabbing him in the back, and there's 27 times she slit his throat, and she shot him after. But in her defense, she said, no, I shot him first. Okay, stupid. If you shot him first in the head, in his brain, he should have been dead, not chasing you around. And she makes up all these dumb stories. Excuse me. And she makes up all these fucking dumb stories about being self-defense. Then they asked her self-defense. If you already shot him, why did you stab him in the heart and stabbed him 27 times and slit his throat? She said, I can't remember that part. Because always, when you can't explain shit as a fucking defendant, you claim amnesia. But it doesn't make no sense. People are not stupid. They're not going to believe that.
Over that and bled. And in fact, down here, it was also clear that he had bled there. And there were some drag marks down that hallway. So somebody had taken the time to manipulate, stage, change the appearance of the scene by placing the body there. The other thing that was notable about the staging of the scene was that whoever had done this killing had also taken the time to wash the body down. And it appeared that the person who had done this actually washed the body down with this big cup, had taken it and had poured it all over the body so that basically there was almost no blood on the body. It was just bloated from decomposition, but the area here, the cut that they were subsequently going to see, no blood anywhere. So it was clear that somebody had cleaned him up such that whatever evidence was there is not going to be there anymore because the body had been washed. The other thing that they noted was that if this body is in such bad condition, there was no knife there, and it appeared there were cuts, and it appears there was a shot, and the gun wasn't there either. So somebody had also removed those from the scene, had taken the time, had thought this out enough to say, I'm going to take the gun, and I'm going to take the knife away. Additionally, what this person had done was that they had taken, possibly, and it's consistent with the glass, had taken the glass and had just poured water down the hallway, down this area, because boxes that were on the ground level in this closet area here were actually soaked in water and blood. And additionally, what they were able to see was that down here, this big, large, massive blood with 45 on there, well, that also had a lot of water in it. That was diluted blood. Somebody had taken the time to actually try to clean that. Not only that, the items have been moved. For example, there was a scale, and the scale underneath it had drops of blood that somebody had. Somehow the blood had gotten there. The scale had been turned over. The mat, the same thing. There was blood underneath. So somebody had taken a considerable amount of time, however much time that would be, to stage that part of the scene. But they weren't through with that part of the staging of the scene. Because what they ended up doing is they took, and there was a matching set of towels there. What they did is they took one of the towels and began to wipe the area there. We don't know exactly what area was wiped down, but the towel is red and has this reddish substance to it. Not only did they wipe it down with that towel, but they took all of the bedding from this king-size bed, and they took that along with this towel and walked it downstairs to that washer as you walk in, and stuck it in there. And what was also notable for the police in terms of what was staged and what was manipulated was that here in this closet and in this bedroom where the bed was, that had not been manipulated. In other words, there was no blood there, but the covers had been taken, anything that was on there had been taken and placed into that washing machine. There were also some of the victim's clothing that was in that washing machine. And also, interestingly enough, in that washing machine downstairs was a camera. And this camera, unfortunately, had been put through the wash. And as everybody that's familiar with the washing, that's not a very gentle sort of process. And the camera was destroyed. It was all messed up. It would never take any pictures again. So that's one of the things that confronted, or that the police were able to see. The other thing that they were able to find came from the body. Things that...
Her downfall was the fucking camera. The camera took these pictures by fucking accident. She thought she had erased them, and she claimed to be a photographer. What fucking karma is that? If you...
It was a very violent attack. Is that there were 3 ways that he was killed. It wasn't just one shot. It was more than that. And what the medical examiner was able to find was, his name's Kevin Horn, was that there was a stab to the heart area
fucking
that
evil.
was not immediately or rapidly fatal. And what that means is he's stabbed and he still lives. He still can walk. He can still stand. He can still grab. He can still speak. That's not immediately fatal. And it's not rapidly fatal. The other thing that the medical examiner found, but it would kill him, this stab to the heart. The other thing that the medical examiner found was that his throat was slit from ear to ear.
What an evil.
And that one was rapidly fatal, which means it would have killed him very quickly because of the blood loss. Not only would it have killed him very quickly, but he would not have gained or had consciousness for a very long period of time. He would have almost immediately have lapsed into unconsciousness. So the one to the throat. Well, and the one to the head, well, again, since that involved the brain, and although the body was decomposed, according to the medical examiner, that one was also rapidly fatal. And additionally, he would lose consciousness immediately. Based on that, and based on the fact that Mr. Alexander in his hands had what the medical examiner is going to term as defensive wounds. In other words, Mr. Alexander did not die calmly. He fought. Whoever this person was that had killed him, he had fought, which meant that he was conscious at the time. So what that meant is that with regard to the injuries that were inflicted, according to the medical examiner, the first injury was the one to the heart. And when that was inflicted, Mr. Alexander at some point began to fight. And what he was able to do was grab the knife, but he grabbed the blade of the knife so that he has cuts in his hand as he's fighting, presumably for his life. They're called defensive wounds. And given that there was blood over the sink that we have over here, and that the sink is waist level, and that blood is coming down from a source, Mr. Alexander was able to get up from where he was standing at this point, go over to the sink, stand there, and bleed. But those aren't the only wounds that he had. He had a grouping of wounds back here, behind his
Stabbed him in the back.
on his shoulders. He had some on his head. He had some on his ears. He had some here, too. And by here, I mean...
This is what kind of... I can't fucking understand that. When people like stalkers or people who love somebody, usually... this is a true story. When police come and they find somebody stabbed, they say stabbing is a personal thing. That means you knew the victim. And when you overkill, like you have 20, 30 stabs, that means it was a crime of passion. This person must have done something so bad that hurt that person's feeling that they have to fucking kill him and stab him like 30, 40 times. You ever watch those shows on Dateline? 117 stabs, 120 stabs. It's like they go on autopilot because it's such a love that is fucking full of hatred. I don't know, man. This is what happened to this guy. There was no reason for her to stab him and kill him. She went through a lot of great plans. She's a smart fucking sicko. But there's no perfect crime. And then when they caught her, remember I told you, the police, when they try to lock you into the first story, when they get you, once they lock you into that story, that's it. You gotta live by that. First she said, "Oh, 2 people came in." When they showed her pictures, she was there. Because at first she denied. She's like, "I got away free," and then the pictures just gave her away. The photos that were in the camera that she destroyed, but the photos were never destroyed.
His front torso area. So the first hit, if you will, was to the heart area. And he was walking around. He was grabbing the knife. He was trying to defend himself, and that's why they call him defensive. Given the blood spatter,
Hey, you fucking piece of shit.
Over here with the 45.
Look at her.
And when he
Evil!
there,
You're evil!
That's when his throat was slit. And he was still alive.
Evil!
We know that because of the amount of blood that was there. So whoever...
If she was in a different country, they'll fucking hang there right after the fucking trial. Right outside in front of the courthouse.
Done it. Basically followed him around, gone to where that 45 is, went to finish him off and cut his throat.
Fucking evil.
But they weren't through with him. What they did is, this individual then, killer, dragged him.
Why is she crying? There's nothing to cry about.
And in that area of the sink, where that number 1 is, right in that general area, and according to the medical...
It's the fucking first day of trial. He hasn't said anything, and she's crying. It's going to be 55 days. It was 55 days. The trial? You fucking evil piece of shit.
Examiner by that time was probably most likely dead.
Fucking man.
Finished the job as if it needed to be finished. Because the first one, even though it wasn't rapidly fatal, was going to be fatal. The second one, for sure, was totally fatal. The third one, well, took a shot, stuck it in his temple, and the body was, at that point, more likely than not dead. So Mr. Alexander, that probably didn't feel that one. And you'll see is that there's a number 1 here. One of the things that was there was a 25 caliber casing, which means that the gun that was used was a 25 caliber. Even though police were not able to recover the gun, they know that it was a 25 caliber handgun. So that's what they have in this particular area. But you can have all of that. You now know that it was Mr. Alexander. You now know how he died. But you really don't know the time. You haven't narrowed that down. And quite frankly, you don't know the identity, one of the most important things, of the person who may have done this.
Yep.
And so police were kind of left there to guess. And you can live all of the fingerprints you want in the world, but if you don't have anybody to compare that to, you're not going to know who the person was. And you can get all of the blood and DNA samples that you want, saliva, any biological substance that you want, but if you don't have it to compare to a known sample, that really doesn't get you any nearer to solving this crime to find out who the person was that had actually killed this individual. Well, the police then went downstairs and they found this camera. And as I told you, this camera was destroyed. But one of the things that they were able to do is they were able to take out a very small item. It's a SIM card, which is really the brain of the camera. And this camera had been recently purchased by Mr. Alexander. He had bought it between...
You know, the SIM card, I didn't even know. Even if you erase it, it still keeps a record of what you had on. So she thought she was smart, like she used to be a photographer. She erased everything. There was a lot of pictures. So the pictures that incriminate her, like the sex pictures, she has sex pictures, and the 3 pictures that were accidentally taken by the camera when it fell, of her throat is slit. And if she took the camera with her, she would have been home free. But God works in a different fucking way. When you're evil, God doesn't let you get away with shit like that. She is pure evil, man. She's the kind of person that comes in those fucking scary movies, you know, like the bad babysitter, the fucking girlfriend, the crazy. I mean, she is nuts, man. Woo!
April of 2008. And his killing. Because according to the defendant, she actually advised him via the phone while he was making this purchase of this camera so that he would get a really good camera. Well, this really good camera was in the washer, it was destroyed, it wasn't going to take any pictures anymore. So the police really seem to have nothing except the SIM card. And the SIM card has gotten wet, it has gone through a cycle, and so what ends up happening is that they get this SIM card. And with this SIM card, they are able to find, and you're going to hear the term encase. They're able to put it through this process so that even though not only has it been damaged, but in this camera, somebody has gone through and erased everything. So that not only is the camera damaged physically,
you fucking animal.
Who had it last, whoever that may be, has erased everything.
Evil!
But the police are able
she is evil!
using this encase program 3 sets of photographs. And the first set of photographs is in the early afternoon. And it's a group of 6 photographs, and these photographs are dated June 4th, 2008, and they have times on them, and they have time to the second. And what they're able to see that on June 4th, at 1:42 and 53 seconds, Mr. Alexander was very much alive. Not only was he very much alive, he was involved in these photographs with a woman. And yes, they were both sinning because they were going at it. They were nude. And yes, they are engaged in sexual relations in these photographs. The photograph is at 1:42:53 p.m. The police are able to go in there and get that photograph. And this shows a frontal view of a woman. Then there's another photograph at 1:44 p.m. and it shows this woman's back end. And
He's showing the picture because she was taking a picture of having anal sex, vagina sex, oral sex. She was doing everything, that piece of garbage. She did everything. She had sex with him for 3 fucking straight hours. Then told him to go take a shower and killed him. I can't comprehend that shit, man. That makes me scared of my girlfriend, man. Shit. Now every time she come, listen, I call my brother, say, yo, my Gail is coming over, by the way. I'm going to call you when she leaves. And I let her hear, let me take a picture of Gail while she's in the house.
they're nude. They're just taking photographs. At 1:44:50 p.m., there's a photograph of the victim, and clearly he's excited. But there's also on there
And his dick is hard.
bottle of KY, which is a personal lubricant that's used during sex. And
KY is used for anal sex, by the way. She introduced him to anal sex. As a Mormon, he fucking went nuts. He couldn't leave that fucking ass alone. Which ended up killing him in the end.
we know that it was the defendant who introduced Mr. Alexander to the use of this KY. Well, the other thing is that we also, at 1:47:15, there's another view of the defendant. And then there are 2 other photographs that you really can't tell the time, but certainly they are of the defendant. So there's a total of 4 photographs of the defendant and 2 of Mr. Alexander. And they're both of them are very much alive. And yes, these are salacious photographs in the sense that what they are doing is what happens behind closed doors. But there is no legal prohibition against her driving or coming over to his house and having sex. There's no prohibition about that. There's no prohibition against Mr. Alexander having sex either. But that's what they find. They find him with a woman having sex on June 4th of 2008. Very much alive, both of them sinning, if you will. Well, but that still doesn't get you any nearer to solving this crime because at least you know that he was alive on June 4th. And as they look at those photographs, they're able to make a determination, are able to see that actually the person in that photograph is somebody that people know. And it's an individual by the name of Jodi Arias. But you know, photographs can be a little blurry, they can be a little deceptive. You kind of want to be sure that that's the person. And so what they do is, on this hallway, and you'll see it as number 77, they were able to find a palm print, left palm print. And that is a mixture, it's a DNA mixture, but it's a palm print. And they're able to compare it to the known photograph of Jodi Arias, and she's left-handed, and that's her palm print that's on there. So now they have a photograph of what they believe is her, plus they have this palm print, and they've developed a DNA profile from there that matches her DNA profile. Then also in the hallway, here at number 6, down here toward the bottom, where there's the RP and the 6, they find a hair, and they conduct DNA analysis on that hair. And the profile that is developed, pursuant to that DNA analysis, matches the profile of the defendant. So the police are now sure that the person in those photographs is the defendant, and it's June 4th of 2008. Again, it's nice to know that, and that they're getting close, and it appears, because of all the blood that's there, that she's the person that committed this horrible crime, that committed this horrible killing. This second set of photographs is 20 photographs, and they are all of Mr. Alexander. And presumably because she's the one that's in the photograph with him, and they're not out of photographs, in other words, he's not taking them himself, it appears that she's the one that's taking these photographs of him in the shower, and they're on June 4th, 2008 at 5:22:24. They were engaged in these acts at 1:45, but now at 5:22:24, he's in the shower, and he's posing for the person who's taking these photographs. And there's many poses of the water running down him, and most of them are from the waist up. So there's no genitalia that is being shown during these photographs. But the 20th photograph shows him sitting in this shower. And you do see the lower right quadrant of his posterior. And that photograph was taken at 5:30. So he was in the shower for approximately 8 minutes with these photographs being taken. Well, that again starts to narrow it down. And then there's finally a third set of photographs. And these are accidental photographs. These are inadvertent.
Okay, these are the photos that got him caught, accidental. Because when she started attacking him, she's pretending she's taking his pictures in a shower while he's sitting down. So she had him in a position where he could not fight back. That fucking evil fucking three-hole wonder. I'm serious. And then during the attack, the camera fell, and the camera was falling. It was taking pictures, and it happened to catch her dragging him because in 62 seconds, she shot him. No. She stabbed him in the heart, stabbed him 27 times. This is 62 seconds. 27 times, slit his throat, and shot him in the face. And that was within 62 seconds. Our fucking wildebeest did that shit. And these are the photographs that caught her. And in the end, eventually were the proof they had that she was there.
Photographs. These are photographs that the killer did not want taken. And the first one of those is 44 seconds. Taken 44 seconds after the photograph of Mr. Alexander's posterior in the shower. And that's taken at 5:31:14. I'm sorry, yes, that is taken at 5:31:14. So it's 44 seconds after the last photograph in the shower. And this is, if you will, a photograph of movement. And the reason that I say it's a photograph of movement is because it's taken, or it's consistent with being taken from the waist. The camera is straight up. In other words, it's not upside down, it's not to the side, it's straight up. But the photograph is a picture of the lights above the shower, and it's nothing more than movement. But that's when the attack is happening, and that's when Mr. Alexander is being attacked by this individual. The next inadvertent photograph is at 5:32:16, 1 minute and 2 seconds later. And that photograph is taken right here, near that 45. And it's another inadvertent photograph. And this photograph is consistent with the camera being taken off from the shoulder, the lanyard that's around it, and falling. But the camera is actually on the ground now and upside down. So this photograph is upside down. All the other photographs have been right side up, which is consistent with the camera falling here, striking the click, or striking the button, and taking a photograph. And you do see the killer in this one. You see, this individual's here. You see her foot. Not only do you see her foot, but you see Mr. Alexander's head. You see his arm. You see him bleeding profusely. You see the area of the sink down here. And you know what else you see? You see her manipulating him, trying to drag him or move him. And we know she moved him because he ends up in the shower.
When she was trying to bring him back to the shower, to put it where it originally was, she accidentally hit another picture that showed her dragging him with her feet. God works in fucking wonderful ways, man. And she got a photo of her dragging the guy. He's dead already, or he's dying, whatever you want to call it. He's dead, But an accidental photo took her fucking feet as she was dragging him and his neck. It's fucking evil, man, what she did to him.
So we do know that he's here for sure. Well, she begins to pull him towards the shower. And there's another photograph that's inadvertently taken 1 minute and 16 seconds later at 5:33:32. And this photograph, again, is upside down when it's found. So the camera had not been moved, apparently, from the previous photograph. And this one is consistent with somebody stepping on the camera and there being a photo that's taken. And on this one, what you do see is the shoulder of Mr. Alexander. You see the trim, and it's a little bit further down this hallway. It's this person that's in court here today. Drags him down in this direction. So the police now know what happened. They know that on June 4th of 2008, starting around in the afternoon, sometime after 1 o'clock, the defendant is there with Mr. Alexander. Even though they've broken up, even though she's in Wairika, somehow she's there in his house in Mesa, Arizona. They know that they engage in what is clearly one of the normal things of our species, and that's sexual intercourse. They enjoy themselves. Yes, from a religious perspective, both of them were sinning. But she's there, and if she's there from Wairika, she took 1,000 miles to get to that sinning. Then we know that at 5:30-ish, later on, he's in the shower. They know that. Whatever's going on, his defenses are down, he's very comfortable. We also know then that as he sat there, she took the knife and began to stab him when he was in that defenseless sitting position and began to stab the knife in his chest.
Okay, look at you.
Struggled
Woo,
with
evil!
the knife. And when he grabbed the knife, of course that resulted in more blood. But since he's not going to die immediately, he's going to die from the loss of blood, and he hasn't lost consciousness, he began to go around the bathroom and ends up at the sink, hunched over. We know that he receives a lot of stab wounds to the back, and they're grouped, and also to his head.
Trying to get
We
away.
know that he was stationary at that point when he gets to that sink. So, we don't know exactly where.
As he tried to get out of the shower, he stand up on the sink, like trying to. He's dying. He's dead because he has been stabbed in the heart, so he already know that he's dead. But human, you're trying to survive. What she does, as he is holding on to the sink and looking at the mirror, he sees her from behind him stabbing at his back, like a slasher, a fucking evil piece of shit. Good.
But it could be, it's consistent with him then being stabbed at that point as he continues to bleed out. And this bleeding out process is not immediate. He can speak, he can talk, blood may be flowing from his mouth, but he can still make noises, he can still move, until he starts to lose strength. We know that, we can say at least, that it's consistent with him then trying to get away. And he got as far as here, the entrance to the major part of the bedroom. And we know that because of the photographs that we have. And we also know because of the big blotch of blood that's there. And that's where the slitting, ear to ear, took place. He was still alive at that point. That's why there's so much blood. Because when you die, the medical examiner will tell you, you can do whatever you want to the body. But if you're already dead, there's not going to be this spurting of blood. There's not going to be this blood that's out there. So he was still alive then. We also know that that is a rapidly mortal wound. And in light of the fact that he was already bleeding, he was more likely than not dead at that point. And by the time she was dragging him down, pulling him down towards this area right here, he didn't need that shot to the head. But she had a gun somewhere. And she got that gun. We don't know the distance. And part of the reason we don't know the distance is because the body's decomposed. But do know that she put that bullet right in his temple. And that also would have been rapidly fatal. That injury would have also rendered him unconscious. So, after that, she took that camera. At some point, knowing what was on there, and you know how difficult it is to deal with these cameras, she was able to go through the process and deleted all of the photographs. She took time to drag him, put him in the shower, clean him up, doing away with whatever evidence may be on there, clean the area there, even though it's still very bloody, took a towel to clean up, walked downstairs. Remember, he's got this dog Napoleon there. Walked downstairs, went to the washing machine, stuck everything in the washing machine, and had the wherewithal to start it.
What is that sound?
Put the camera in there after she deleted
I think it's from the
all
video,
of those
not from me.
photographs. Police knew that that's who she was. But they had something else that they needed to deal with. Because as I told you, this happened on June 4th, which was a Wednesday. The body wasn't discovered until Monday, the 9th of June. On
So
the
he's
10th,
already decomposing.
since everything happened at night, the investigation really took off on the 10th. Detective Steve Flores of the Mesa Police Department, received a telephone call from somebody wanting to help. This person here called him up, wanted to help him out, and started to talk about how the relationship with Travis Alexander.
Okay. This is the problem with people who commit crime. They try to control the narrative with the police. You cannot do that. The police are not fucking stupid, man. So she's already in California. They haven't gotten the pictures yet. So they're going to eventually get the pictures once they get them out of the lab. They don't even know these pictures in the first place. So she calls to want to help. So when the police are very smart, they've already been through the shit. When a person keeps on pushing themselves into the situation, trying to control the narrator from California now, then they started recording her. They know she had something to do with it, but they can't prove it because she's in California, and the guy was fucking killed in Arizona. So there's a problem here. How do we connect this fucking idiot? She kept on calling and calling and calling. The police said, why is this lady's calling? There's something wrong here. Because that's what usually happens, because people who are control freak like her, or evil like her, they think they can control the narrative and everything, because they really mislead people in her life. She misleads her boyfriend. She misled him. She had sex with him for 4 hours before she fucking killed him. She had sex with him for 4 hours before she killed him. You understand? Then went on to shower and stab him fucking multitude of times. So she kept on calling. This is her downfall, because when you got that guilty conscience, you can't.
How she was in Wairika, California at this time that this happened, could not have had anything to do with this at all. She was asked, well, does Mr. Alexander have any guns? Oh, no. Mr. Alexander has no guns whatsoever. All he could do for him to defend himself, all he had was his.
That will come back to haunt her. You see, the police, they always like you, man. The police are fucking smart. He asked her, did Travis Alexander, her boyfriend who got killed, does he have a gun in the house? Oh, no, Alexander never had a gun. His only weapons were his fists. Then during her murder trial later on, she said she found the gun, it was in the house, and she ran into the closet and got it and shot him with his own gun. She said he didn't have a gun. So this is what happens when you talk too much before you're arrested, or before you are called a suspect. These things will eventually work against you. They are around your neck, and they will drown you in the end.
Fist. How about knives? Did he have any knives? Oh, no knives.
No guns.
Not trapped. So she's telling them he didn't have a gun there, so that the killers, whoever they were, according to her, brought them with them. The other thing that she says is that, well, you may want to start looking. She gives him a lead. You may want to start looking at one of his roommates.
See what they do? Well, I've seen a lot of police videos. I'm a fucking addicted to police videos and trials and tribulation like this. And usually the police have this thing. Once the suspects try to push the investigative to somebody else, like their cousin or their friend, as if the police are stupid. They know what you're doing. Just shut the fuck up. All you need to say is, don't call. She should never have called. And when she got caught, can I get a lawyer? That's all you have to do. And sometime you're either going to go free, or you're going to save 10 or 15 years out of jail if you refuse to talk to the police without a lawyer. If you refuse, only talk to the police with a lawyer.
A guy by the last name of Brown, Thomas Brown. That's who you really need to look at, because if you're really looking for people, that's the person who you may want to look at.
Yeah, he owed the money.
Because I wasn't there. According to her, the last time she was there was in April of 2008. Yeah. So how could it be her, since this happened on June 4th, 2008? So it really couldn't have been her. Well, at that time, of course, the police know. They've seen photographs. They already know they got fingerprints there. So they know that perhaps isn't the truth.
That's the family.
It's not a perhaps proposition. This detective keeps talking to her. And she says, it really wasn't me. I didn't have anything to do with it, and describes this relationship that she had with Mr. Alexander. The police need to do something with that, because she has made it a point of saying she...
You want to hear something interesting? When they found the body, that girl was supposed to go with him to Cancun, Mexico. The first thing she said in the 911 call is that he has a girlfriend who's crazy and she's a stalker. The first minute they found the body, they're already naming her as a suspect. Not the police, her friend, the circle of friends that hangs around her. They knew she was a fucking stalker of her behavior when she was in Arizona, how she used to show up in front of his house. She used to scare his girlfriends or any girls he goes out with. So if you listen to the 911 call, the first thing she'll tell he has a stalker girlfriend. She was a suspect from day one. All the friends were telling the detective that there's a lady named, or an evil monster named Arias, Jodi Arias. And what she does, she calls. So the detective really has an idea that this lady's considered evil, right? And he continues to go. Let's go.
He wasn't there. I couldn't have possibly been there. And so they start looking further at a possibility where she was and that sort of thing. And one of the things that they're able to discover is that a week before this killing on June 4th of 2008, on May 28, 2008, there was a burglary report, seemingly unrelated to this case. There was a burglary report up in Wairika, California, where she was, May 28, 2008.
Hey.
And the burglary, the police responded.
Mind you, she had an argument with him on the 18th of May. Yeah. Then she started planning his murder. She lived with her grandfather, and her grandfather had a .25 caliber gun. So what she does is she calls the police and reports a robbery. What's missing? The gun. So she's trying to get rid of the gun. She's keeping it so she could use it to kill him. So she's already setting up the motion to kill the guy like 6 or 7 days before that. So the gun, she's reporting in case it's stolen. So they can't trace it back to her grandfather. That's how she got her weapon. That she said that it belongs to Travis.
Sometime around 3:30 in the afternoon of May 28th, which was about a week before Mr. Alexander was killed. And they responded to a house on Pine Street, the house where the defendant was living back on May 28th of 2008. And police did talk to the defendant about it, and there were items that were taken during this burglary. But according to the officer that responded, Kevin Friedman of the Wairika Police Department, well, there was something not right about this burglary. I mean, maybe the entry, there was a little bit of a problem. It was just like they were very careful how they entered. They opened the drawers, but, there were items that clearly were of value that they didn't take. And, well, it just didn't seem quite right. When he went there were 2 people there, the grandparents, but the defendant wasn't there. She was called and showed up and indicated that she had been the last person there and had been there as late as approximately 1 p.m. And the burglary was reported sometime around 3:30. So it happened between 1 and 3:30 p.m. And the defendant reported, oh, yes, there was some items that were taken of mine. There was a $20 bill and a $10 bill, so there was $30 that were taken of mine. And luckily for me, before I left, I was able to hide my laptop underneath some dirty clothing. So just in case somebody came in and wanted to steal stuff, they didn't take my laptop. And thank God I did that because they didn't take my laptop. Well, those were some of the things that were taken, and some of the things that were taken. But one of the things that was taken was a .25 caliber handgun.
Yeah, the gun.
To the grandfather. And this is just a week before the killing.
That's right, she's planning.
And it matched in the sense that it's the same caliber, the .25 caliber casing that is labeled number 1 and is found by the sink. Well, the police looked at that and knew that there was a time, it was very close in time. The other thing that police were able to find was that on that same day, May 28th of 2008, at 9:25 p.m., the defendant sent an email. And she sent an email to Travis Alexander. And she mentions that he's going to Cancun. That's the first mention there is in any of their correspondence, whether it be text messaging, whether it be emails or instant messaging, of Cancun. He indicates that she knows that he's going to Cancun. It is clear now that he's going to Cancun, and she ain't going with him. So that's something that they have. The other thing that they start looking around and they're able to find is that the defendant, on June 2nd, which is 2 days before the killing, actually went from Wairika, California to Redding, California, which is maybe 1 to 2 hours away, south. And she went south for the purpose of renting a car. They have car rental agencies in Wairika, but she actually went to a different town that's approximately 90.
She drove 90 miles from her town to rent a car because in case an investigation comes to her town, they're going to say, oh, did Jodi had a car so-and-so? In case they see a car, no, she had no car. So she traveled 90 miles to rent a car from Budget, whatever it's called. And when they asked her, why did you drive 90 miles? She said, well, they didn't have Priceline or something. And then it's a lie. Then she ended up taking the plane with Priceline. There's a lot of shit. We're gonna see this as in the coming days. I just want you to watch this with me, the opening statement, so you could get an idea of the case. So when they start talking, you could say, oh, that's what he was talking about. You understand what I'm trying to do here?
80 miles away. And she went to a Budget rent-a-car, and she spoke to the agent there. And one of the things that she was able to do is rent a car. But again, it was not in her town, and it was in a place that's far away. And the person who rented the car to her, well, he was shown a photographic lineup. And he said, and asked whether or not he saw the person that he rented the car to. He said, oh yeah, there she is right there, the defendant. He said, but the photograph that you're showing me, she's got black hair. When she came to rent the car for me, she was a blonde. So,
she had blonde hair. Listen how evil she is. She had a wig, or she dyed her hair blonde. She has picture which is blonde hair. Blonde, I'm saying blind. Blonde hair. Then when she went to see Travis and kill him, she had a brunette, like black hair. So she did everything, like a James Bond movie. But it all blew up in her face. This fucking guy, Juan Martinez, the prosecutor, is a fucking crazy man. I read his book. It's beautiful.
It's the same girl, I'm sure of that. But her hair color changed. Her hair color changed from June 2nd to June 4th in the afternoon when she was having sex with Mr. Alexander. So we know that from the photographs. And she rented the car and said she was going to return it on June 6th of 2008. And in fact, she returned it on June 7th of 2008. And there was over 2,000 miles in that car. One of the other things that police were able to do is that they were able to find receipts. And they were able to show that the defendant, in fact, and she readily admits this now, that she did take a trip. She took a trip, but she was going to go to Utah, according to her. She was going to go to Utah because she has a love interest there, or somebody that could potentially be a love interest, by the name of Ryan Burns. And she was going to visit him, not only visit him, but she was also going there to maybe do some marketing with PPL on this Thursday afternoon.
So she needed an alibi, so she made a date to see this guy in Utah. But when you go to Utah, you have to go through Las Vegas and take a certain highway. You can't go toward Arizona. So she had her phone shut off for 14, 15 hours or 20 hours. And she never made it the next day to her other friend. She was the alibi. She was supposed to setting him up as an alibi. She went to Travis. She spent the night, killed him with no problem, went to Utah, had sex with the other guy, and went back home. So she was building an alibi. But she had like 18 hours after she was lost. She could not make up for, and she bought she borrowed gas cans, so she doesn't have to fill up the car with gas if she goes through Arizona. So there won't be no records of her buying gas in Arizona, and he's gonna catch her later. He's not gonna say it right now, but she had an extra gas can that she bought from Walmart, and then she said she returned it. Then the guys went to Walmart. She said she never returned it. And it was a Perry Mason moment. Good.
Which would have been the 5th of June. And so they're able to see that she goes to Southern California. She stops at places like Starbucks there in the evening, sometime around 9 o'clock in the evening, and giving her plenty of time to be there the next day. So they're able to see that not only does she have the opportunity, she actually is placed near the area of California, which would have been short is a relative term, drive to Mesa. So when she says to the police back on June 10th of 2008 that she hadn't been there, well, the police knew that was not true, because they could trace her movements. Well, the other thing that they were able to find that came out is that...
Mr. Martinez, we're going to take a recess at this time.
Okay, thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, please be back in the designated area at 1:30. Please remember the admonition. I'm going to ask that you review the admonition. It is in your black binder. You should have it in writing.
We left off before lunch talking about the police investigation into the defendant's statement that she was not at Mr. Alexander's home on June 4th of 2008. And specifically, we were talking about the police obtaining documents that showed that she rented a car in Redding, California on June 2nd, and that they were able to show that she actually made her way down south in California and made her way down to Southern California, and at some point made her way over to Utah. And ostensibly, she indicated that she was going to Utah to meet up with a friend, somebody that she had a romantic interest in, somebody by the name of Ryan Burns. And what Mr. Burns will tell you is that she was supposed to arrive a day earlier, and somehow, for this whole period of time, couldn't get a hold of her. Tried to call her, she wouldn't call him back. We know now that the reason for that was because she was with Mr. Alexander. But she did happen to arrive in the Salt Lake City, Utah area on June 5th, June 5th, which was that Thursday. And as she got there, sometime around a little bit before 11 o'clock, Mr. Burns indicated that he had to go to a meeting, and that if she wanted to go with him, that she could follow him in her car, the rental car that she was driving. As they were driving in West Jordan, Utah, an officer with the West Jordan Police Department stopped her in that vehicle. And the reason they stopped...
Okay. When she got to Utah, a police officer, a traffic cop, stopped her. Her plate was upside down because she took the front of the plate and she took the back of the plate while she was in Arizona. So when she was parked in front of the house, and then when she put it on, she was so nervous. When you do something, she put it on backwards. And she explained, oh, it was just the kids. And later on, it's going to haunt her. Everything she's doing right now, she did, is going to come back to bite her in the ass.
In that car was because there was a problem with her license plate. There are 2 plates that are required in Utah, and in fact, there are 2 plates that are provided and required in California. So when the car was rented, there was a front plate and there was also a back plate. Well, the car that she was driving did not have a front plate. So between the time that she rented it and the time that she was stopped, somebody took that plate off. Additionally, the reason that she was stopped is that the plate in the back had been turned upside down. And so the police officer stopped the car, and he will come in. His name's Michael Gaglietti, and he will tell you that the person that was driving the car was the defendant. And she provided some story about being at Starbucks, and that somehow some of the kids were trying to play a trick and took the license plate off the car and put one of the license plates inside the car, and then somehow turned the other license plate upside down. Well, she continues on with Mr. Burns, and then at some point the meeting is over. They go back to his place. And what seems to be something with her is that the inevitable happens. They do begin to become engaged amorously.
Yeah, fuck them.
They begin to get involved in that sort of fashion. And Mr. Burns will tell you that, yes, they did go.
Her only currency in life was her fucking vagina. I don't know if that was her currency. Every time she wants to get somebody, use that currency, the vagina or the back.
Further than that. And in fact, he will say that he had his hands between her legs. And he will also say that the reason that they didn't go all the way or continue on to sexual intercourse is because he's Mormon. And his teachings, which I've been telling you about, do not allow for that sort of behavior, if you will. And so it wasn't that the defendant was stopping him, it was that he decided not to go any further than that. And then the police also determined that the car was finally returned on the 7th of June back to the budget rent-a-car in Redding, California. Well, the police, now knowing that there was this trip that was planned, they have the photograph, they now have the DNA, and they also have the fingerprints, arrested the defendant for the first-degree murder of Travis Alexander. And as part of that process of the arrest, the police conducted or spoke with the defendant. And of course, prior to speaking with the defendant, they admonished her of the Miranda warnings, they talked to her about what the Miranda warnings were, and she agreed to speak with them, and these are videotaped. And this was on June 15th of 2008. And they arrested her while she was in this home on Pine Street, the home that she lived there with her grandparents, the home where there was this burglary on May 28th of 2008. And when they spoke with her on that June 15th, the defendant said, well, you know, I'll talk to you about it, but I don't, other than what I've already told you, I don't know too much about it. Well, why don't you tell us what you do know? Well, I can tell you that the last time that I was there was back in April of 2008. That's what she told me. And they said, well, are you sure? I mean, we have some photographs of you there. She said, well, are you sure they weren't taken on a different date? No, we're sure they weren't taken on a different date. Well, I wasn't there. It wasn't me. Well, what about this time lapse? What about this gap where you sort of disappear? You're supposed to be in Utah with this other boyfriend of yours, and yet you can't be found. People are making calls, there are no calls going out, nothing going in. What about that time? I got lost. What ended up happening is that I ended up getting lost, and I got so lost I almost can't tell you where I was. But I do know one thing, she said. I ended up on the 40, the I-40. And the detective said to her, how can that be possible? If you're coming from California, and you're going to Salt Lake City, Utah, how is it possible, since the road goes northeast, the 15 goes northeast, and takes you through Las Vegas that way?
So she's saying the highway that goes to Arizona. So you cannot lie. And then I was lost. I fell asleep. I don't know. I'm a bad sleeper. He said even if he slept as much as you can, there is no way to explain the amount of time that you are not on your phone, like a radar, where we could find you. Because you went on